It's halftime at the Bayou Classic. More than 65,000 people have packed into the New Orleans Superdome. The Southern University and Grambling football teams have headed for the locker rooms. Fans from all over the country know they're about to get their money's worth.
I'm thinking, I'm shaking. I'm not really shaking, but I have butterflies. I'm like, okay, I'm nervous. I have to do this. It's coming up.
Southern's high-stepping drum major takes the field.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? New Orleans, Louisiana. Are you ready for the Southern University Marching Band from Jaguar land?
He does a back band, a Southern University band tradition for half a century. Leaning back so far his hat touches the ground.
Support for this program is provided in part by the law firm of DeQueer, Clark & Adams, LLP of Baton Rouge. Winston DeQueer Sr., Managing Partner. The Southern University Alumni Federation. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Southern University has a certain swagger. Our steps are a certain speed. We probably march at a tempo faster than a lot of other bands.
We're going to always keep the marching style. And we always want to try to have that brilliant, brassy sound that everybody has known Southern University marching band to have.
The band's quick swagger, the high-pitched sound, and the drum major's elastic back band set it apart from every other band in the nation. But its greatest asset may be its diversity.
We're not just stricken to one type of genre. We play all the way from rock and roll to R&B, to pop, and to everything else. That's why we call it Human Jukebox.
When we come to them with a song that we like to play, they take it into consideration, and most likely if they like it, we're gonna play it. When you play something like I'm So Glad or Old Southern Spirit, that's something that even the older people can relate to, because you can see more of the, grandmothers and moms standing up. But the new songs, that's for the student body, and when you play something that they like to hear, they're gonna give you that energy, and that's what we feed off of.
Most of the band's traditions were established during the nearly 40-year tenure of former band director Isaac Greggs. He first came to the university as a music education student in 1944.
I was 15 years old when I came to Southern. Dr. Felton Clark was president, and it was his desire to take a diamond in the rough, polish it in 4 years, and send out a beautiful diamond that would be worth millions. That's what I tried to do.
Dr. Felton G. Clark was the second president of Southern University. His father, Joseph Samuel Clark, was the university's founder and first president. The younger Clark implemented many of his father's ideals in managing the university. Both Clarks set high standards for their students. It didn't matter how well or ill prepared the young men and women were when they arrived at the university. One of their goals was to
take these students as where they are, but when you turn out a student a graduate who can become a community leader, who uses language, both written and spoken correctly. And I remember J.S. particularly placed a great deal of emphasis on being on time. He would not let a program begin 5 minutes late. If it were to have begun at 7 o'clock, start the program at 7 o'clock. This was a discipline.
He thought that every student should engage in some kind of work, whether the university paid you or not. So all of us had to spend so many weeks in the dining halls serving meals. All of us had to serve time and scrubbing floors and dormitories. That was, he said, and then someone spent time cutting grass. He said, student need to know how to work and have respect for work.
While administrators and professors had high expectations for students, The students had even higher expectations for the faculty and administrators. Many of Southern's first students had parents or grandparents who had endured the harsh burdens of slavery when most African Americans didn't dare dream of a college education.
I always get emotional when I think about this, that people were telling their children, you go to Southern and you learn whatever they're teaching there. So your life will not be as hard as mine. So your life will be easier than mine. So students came to Southern with that in mind. I'm coming here to improve my life, to become a better person, to become proficient in some field.
Popular majors for students in that era included education, home economics, and agriculture.
Teach them how to can food. Teach them how to cook vegetables and plan a balanced diet and that sort of thing. These were the earlier fields. Music was not among that number, but music was always needed to sort of relieve them of these kinds of involvements.
Groups of students performed together shortly after Southern was opened in New Orleans in 1880. Not long after Southern moved to Baton Rouge in 1914, the university had a stage band. The band grew slowly with the university, and despite limited resources, it helped to boost school spirit and pride during Founders Day, graduation ceremonies, and athletic events.
The university provided instruments to the extent it could. It didn't have big budgets, it didn't have much money. Many of the students came with their own instruments. The university had to buy the big instruments like the tubas, the bass drums, and that sort of thing. But it didn't have huge budgets. You know, for band, they had to sort of make it on a shoestring. So the band was necessarily small because of the number of instruments which were available to students at that time.
A number of people helped to build the stage band. Tony Langston, W.H. Hamlin, and Ella Amaker Patty, to name a few. Patty enrolled at Southern University with extensive skills in music, excelling in both piano and violin.
You see, some families felt that no matter what the circumstances were, their children should be exposed to the arts.
Well, she was a hard worker, and she had a better mind than I did. I mean, she was good in her studies, better in her studies than I was. And she was always busy, always trying to do something.
A little known fact to most youngsters is that women performed in the Southern Band in the early years.
That was the only way you could have a kind of fairly decent sized band. You'd have to let the girls who had been playing instruments too play in the band.
In the 1930s, J.O.B. Mosley began organizing the marching band. He and his successors quickly learned there were some things they would have to do without.
The band didn't have any uniforms. We are in white shirts, black ties, and dark pants. That was the uniform. I'm talking about, this is 46. That was always considered a frill at a university, you know. That was not half as important as paying teachers and getting some books in the library and getting some experiments going on in the lab. Music was kind of at the lower end of the totem pole.
Musical performances generated money for the university. There were separate evening concerts for black audiences and white audiences. The quartet also helped to win over support from the state legislature.
Southern used to always have a quartet. When the presidents, J.S. Clark particularly, would go down to the legislature, he would take a quartet down to entertain the legislators, to soften them, so that they might give them some money. And when that stopped, I'm told, Felton Clark, his successor, said 2 or 3 of them asked for him, where are those people who used to sing those Negro songs?
Successive band directors demanded the very best from the students. They didn't allow money to become a deterrent.
T. Leroy Davis, who came to Southern in the late 40s, had been trained at Tuskegee. And Tuskegee had this military bearing. And sure enough, when he came to Southern, the band did have a military presence, the way they marched and the way they did their formations. Now, when Ludwig Freeman came, he had studied 2 or 3 years at the University of Michigan, and he came with the Michigan idea of the band, you know, with the block letters, with the formations, and with the spelling out of different alphabets and that sort of thing.
During the late 1940s, the band only had several dozen students, but among them, 15-year-old Isaac Benjamin Greggs. Greggs had been encouraged to become a musician from the time he was a very small child.
My mother was a great influence on me because, you see, she had God-given talent. She had no studying of piano. She just played the piano. What she heard at church, she could play it. And I was playing chopsticks when I was 4 or 5 years old. And she really wanted me to play music. But in my neighborhood, I couldn't play no piano in Allendale. So I went to see Louis Armstrong at the Palace Park, and I heard him play. I was completely overwhelmed. And so I went back home and I told her, if you want me to play music, I'll be glad to play it. Just buy me a trumpet.
Little Isaac got his trumpet, and he never stopped playing it. That trumpet landed him in Southern's marching band, in which he was a featured vocalist and soloist.
I've known that they've had a good band since the time I was even in it. And at that time, we didn't have but 64 pieces. And we worked just as hard as we did now with 170 pieces because we enjoyed it.
Greggs was more serious about music than most of his contemporaries. He was a music major. After graduation, Greggs went back to Shreveport to direct a junior high school band. But shortly thereafter, he was drafted into military service. He was able to use that experience to sharpen his musical skills by performing with the military band and the Continental Sextet. After his military stint, Greggs returned to Shreveport, where he resumed directing middle and high school bands. It wasn't long before he realized how much Southern President Felton Clark appreciated his musical talent and charisma. Dr. Clark sent Greggs and his wife a $1 check congratulating them on the arrival of their first child, a gesture Dr. Clark made to only a few former students. Greggs was hired at Southern Laboratory School a few years later. Within a 4-year span, his bands had won 6 of the top awards in the state for performances at Shreveport and Baton Rouge. In 1969, Greggs was named director of the university's marching band.
He was a perfectionist. He drilled his instrumentalists, drilled them. And then when they got out on the field, they had to be perfect, no mistakes.
He brings focus, he brings energy, he brings enthusiasm, he brings a refined musical skill. There were years when the football team at Southern was not very much, and the band literally carried the show and attracted the crowd. The crowds kept coming.
They've been known to put on instruments and dance the latest dance, whatever it is. And the audience goes wild. It goes wild with it. So it became more entertainment. What was it before? I guess it was used to generate school spirit.
Some might find some of the band's moves a bit risque. Band members disagree.
We're not trying to be provocative, but creative and trying to get a crowd at least what they want to see. Not too much as overdoing it. We don't want to underdo it also, but we want to keep it right there at the middle, right at the middle.
The band grew from about 100 members in the mid-60s to 220 members under Greggs. He put the band on the world stage. The musicians were booked for 2 weeks at New York's Radio City Music Hall. They were held over for an additional 4 weeks. It made trips to several foreign countries. The Human Jukebox, as it has been nicknamed, also performed in the Rose Bowl Parade in Pasadena, California.
I start with the instrument swing, I start with the Jaguar rock, and I also the shock absorbing system where you can march with the instrument and don't draw your lips, where you can still get a good tone out of the instrument. And I think it's been very successful over these past 33 years.
You just have to be physically fit. A lot of dedication. Getting up, jogging in the morning sometimes, because we practice marching up and down the field daily, 8 to 5 sometimes, without even playing music, just marching up and down the field.
Drill practices often ran late into the evening, but in the 1990s, that began to change. when Griggs adopted a process for mapping the routines on paper first.
I know exactly how many steps they're gonna make on that football field. I know exactly how much time I use to make so many steps. I've just about gotten marching on the football field doing a show down to a science because I write everything down before I give it to the kids. So when we go out to practice, we only practice for an hour, and that ends that.
A wider talent base and more national awareness by prospective students have also contributed to the band's evolution.
And so in a typical year, we'll get 100, maybe up to 150 kids who will come in order to go out for the band. Out of that number, he might select 30 or 40 or 50.
Despite their skill, students may suffer from nervousness at game time.
The upperclassmen that were marching next to me told me that if you feel nervous, just don't play and just think about what you're gonna do next. And that's what I did the whole show. I didn't play a note.
It used to be like every game I'd come up and I'd get very nervous when we'd get ready in the end zone to march out or on the sidelines. You know, that's just when you start the little shake going. But once you get into the show, within the first 30 seconds, you just take your mind off the crowd and go with it.
Grant Milliken vividly recalls the first day he showed up for band practice. He was running late, and Griggs was rehearsing a song with the band.
He didn't even cut off the band, and they just stopped playing once I just showed up because, I just walked in the middle of rehearsal. So I was very uneasy at first, but as soon as we went to a dinner about an hour later and found all these people sitting beside me, asking me questions, who I am, just welcome me in, and never had a problem ever since.
Grant is not the first white student to perform in the Southern Band. Timothy Sims set that precedent in the fall of 1990, ushering in new opportunities for aspiring students. Women disappeared from the band during the 1960s and didn't return until more than 2 decades later.
You don't just march these days, 1, 2, 3, 4. You bring up your legs, you do this, and you twist your instruments, and you throw it. It's a lot of physical activity that is associated with playing in a band.
Normally we march 160 steps per minute during the show, but there is a section in the show where we march 320 steps per minute.
Despite the physical demands, Southern President Dolores Richard Spikes insisted that women be admitted to the band beginning in 1989.
I kind of felt out of place because out of the whole 99 class, I was the only female. But after a while, I kind of adjusted to it because everyone looked at me as the little sister. Everyone was real nice, and after a while, it became pretty easy. And then after that, more and more females have come into the band.
Today, female members make up almost 20% of the organization. About 90% of Southern students receive tuition assistance. That number includes most band members who arrive on campus from underprivileged families. They love the opportunity to travel, and for many, it's the first time to really do so. While there is an occasional airline flight, most trips are by bus.
The travel experience that this band provides is second to none. To see the wow on the student's face. We went to California. I took a small help band to Virginia, and you had a lot of students, it was their first time flying on a plane.
Oh, we went to Bermuda. We did a parade in Bermuda. It was nice experience. Got a chance to see what the ocean looked like, clear, and compared to the water we have in the river over there, kind of murky and dark. But the water was crisp. You could see straight through it.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You go places you never been, see things you never see, do things you never do, meet people you never meet before.
Still, the biggest thrill for parents and relatives is a chance to see them perform closer to home.
We marched a couple of Mardi Gras parades. Our mother, she's a police officer in New Orleans, so she works the parades, and to see her face light up like that, it really, touches me. We did the Saints game early on this year. My mom was crying. It's just a lot of emotions that really make me feel great about this band.
My parents have a lot of pride. They come to every home game. They've been to all the Bayou Classics.
In 2005, Griggs took his final trip with the band. retiring after 36 years as the Southern Marching Band director. The school made sure that his legacy would endure by picking Lawrence Jackson, a former assistant and student under Greggs, to replace him.
Well, I've been around Dr. Greggs for a number of years, but as a member of his staff since 1991. I observed him. He took me around the campus. He showed me some things that only was for my eyes and my ears regarding this job.
Jackson shares many of Greggs' theories on managing the band.
Dr. Greggs always said there's no business like show business. So in show business, you always have to create, be innovative to get the audience excited, to get the fans wanting to come to the game and not go in the concession stand during the halftime, because you're going to miss the computer technology of all bandology, the summa cum laude of band. Now, why you were late? We always taught us to be at the right place at the right time with the right equipment, ready to concentrate. Excessive walking and talking and moving about make concentration not impossible, but difficult. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir. It'd be best if you don't show up late. If you show up late, then you have to see the doctor, and nobody wants to see the doctor at all. When they walk through the door, their head is shaking like, man, I messed up.
It's always Doc teaching in all of us, but he also taught us how to adjust to current times. We always want to make our own mark and experiment with what hasn't been done yet.
Jackson's assistant, Nathan Hamer, is also a graduate of Southern's band program. He sees band members through his own eyes as a former student when they perform.
Just something about this band that still gives me chills. It is just exciting. And to put that uniform on for the first time as a student and then put it on for the first time as a director is just like a surreal experience.
While some things have changed, others remain the same, like the thrill of competing against Louisiana rival Grambling in the Bayou Classic.
It's nothing but a great spectacle. It's a kinship, it's a friendship, it's a relationship, and it's even a fellowship of pure devoir on and off the field between the two bands. And we will not lose the battle because you can't come home and face your fans.
Bayou Classic is a big deal. That's the last game of the season, and a lot of hard work goes into that.
Tens of thousands of people watch as it goes up against the Grambling Marching Band on the eve of the Bayou Classic. The winner of the pregame battle really depends on who you ask. The next day, as halftime rolls around, the two marching bands are set to do battle once again. This time with a national television audience watching and a crowd of nearly 70,000 people rocking the Superdome. From the outside, it may look as though the band's performances are the primary focal point of both the band directors and the students. But a larger objective reveals itself as you look deeper into the program.
For them to start off 4 years as a freshman, develop, grow, learn valuable work ethic, work skills, and get a diploma and walk across the stage, that is a success story. My concern is getting them to buy into getting an education, doing the right, being at the right place at the right time, having good ethics.
I know the band draws a lot of people here, but you're not here for the band. You have to realize that you're here to get an education and get your degree. So once that's instilled in your mind, it's really not that hard to realize what you have to do.
1, 2, bring it!
The joy of leading the Southern band comes with its share of worries, and the biggest is often budget.
I had my travel budget cut 100%. 100%.
In recent years, budget cuts have forced a reduction in band scholarships. But leaders remain optimistic its best days are yet to come.
What attracted me was just the love of the music, the love of the band. And I don't think that's going to change regardless if we have a $1 billion budget or zero budget, because there's no price you can put on a passion.
Support for this program is provided in part by the law firm of DeQueer, Clark, and Adams, LLP of Baton Rouge. Winston DeQueer Sr., Managing Partner. The Southern University Alumni Federation. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.